Gee, wouldn't it have been exciting if William Manchester really could have been a good writer after all that talk? He has all the style of a caption writer for the Sears Roebuck Spring Special Sale catalog. I am sorry, but the whipped cream of life, the vast storehouse of the honey of existence, is overflowing this poor mortal receptacle. What do you mean? What's the matter? Are you putting me down? What's the matter? Can't you stand poetry or something like that? You don't like poems? Yeah, it takes a heap of sitting around to make a house a home. Razzmatazz. A roadie tune. I'm a rotten person. A very rotten person. There's a Japanese Sandman. Hey, oh, come on now, that just couldn't be. You know, I'm sometimes, of course, we live in this thing called us, you know, this little pot that we all live in, the you, the me, and they're swirling down in that little pot all kinds of drifting little bits and pieces, little fragments of dreams, ideas, half-heard, half-thought things, and it's very difficult sometimes to tell whether one of them is real or whether, you know, you just sort of made it up. And for the last 10 minutes, there's been bouncing around in my head something called the Japanese Sandman. There couldn't have been a song ever about a Japanese Sandman. Oh, no. Was there really a song about a Japanese Sandman? Was there, Don? I don't think so. You're right, Don. No. Now, well, you see, now, there's the problem. Don says no, Lee says yes, which shows the yin and yang of existence. Don, of course, is a basic realist. Lee, on the other hand, is a full-blown idealist romantic. And the idea of a song about a Japanese Sandman appeals to the romantic nature of this person. So automatically she says, yeah, there was a song called Japanese Sandman. Well, come on. There must have been a song called The Hungarian Dream Merchant, too, then. Yeah, the Japanese Sandman. Couldn't have been a song like that. And it's just, oh, this poor mortal soul of mine. Speaking of poor mortal souls, Don, would you please bring me a little solace there? Just a little, please. Sometimes I'm happy, when I'm with you. happy, happy, oh baby. Sometimes they am on with you, oh, why are you, pop, boop, pop. Oh, that's the kind of stuff that really, isn't that nice? It just brings the old thing up there, just brings the tears to your eyes. Sometimes I'm happy. Would you please give Don a little cheap guitar music? Just bring it in there, because something very important is coming. No, that's all right, Don. Take that Sometimes I'm Happy stuff off. We've had enough of that. It's just awful music. Just terrible. Japanese Sandman. Look, a little cheap guitar music, any cut, Don, you just lay it on there, because we have a very important thing that we must read to you tonight. It's by way, of course, you know this is a very fair radio station. We believe in giving the other side their due. We believe in hearing the voice of the minority. We also like to hear the voice of Mr. Yuckus, as Barry often calls him. Barry has a universal character. And do you remember, who was it, the writer, the columnist years ago? He created this character that he always wrote a column to called George Spelvin, or Spevlin, George Spelvin, American. Who was that? No, come on. It was not Westbrook Van Voorhees. He never wrote a column. Anyway, he just had this thing called George Spelvin. Well, Barry's got a universal character, which he calls Mr. Yuckus. And whenever the phone rings, and Barry's in a hurry, and he's not going to fool around, the girl on the phone says, Barry, there's somebody on the phone for you. And Barry says, tell Mr. Yuckus that I have just left. Tell Yuckus I've just left, will you? And then either that or Barry will holler out of his office when he can't remember who the person is he's supposed to call. He says, hey, out there at the desk, did Mr. Yuckus call? You know who I mean, Mr. Yuckus. Did he call? So Barry's got that little private person that he has that he deals with all the time. It's his universal patsy. And we here at this radio station believe that Mr. Yuckus should be heard from time to time, even though Mr. Yuckus is a gourd head, a hollow brain. And would you please bring a little romantic, cheap guitar music to bear on the scene there, Donald? I have a very serious communique that I must read to you, and it's from the president of the American Korabi Planters Association. And I read it to you in its entirety, by way of giving the other side its due. Dear Mr. Shepherd, I have the unpleasant job of informing you that recent disparaging remarks concerning kohlrabi and the numerous kohlrabi byproducts has done irreparable harm not only to us but the whole kohlrabi industry. The situation has become so acute that our field hands have refused to work until you clear up this unfortunate misunderstanding. They feel that if there is no such thing as kohlrabi, what have they and their forefathers been doing in kohlrabi patches for these many years? What with your damaging remarks and recent publicity involving the CIA and its use of innocent citizens for undercover espionage, these fine workers have become so distraught and emotional that they have refused to plant this year's crop. As you well know, if kohlrabi is not planted by March 25th, the yield is not worth harvesting. I'm sure that you are aware that we are under contract to the United States government to package both K rations and Special K, a breakfast food, and a poor kohlrabi crop would be detrimental to the health of the American serviceman overseas. As a patriotic American and former GI, I am sure you can see the severity of the situation, and we request your help by your sponsoring a full-page advertisement in either the suburban Philadelphia Post-News-Dispatch or the New York Times at your option, to the effect of a full and complete retraction. I am very sure you would be interested in some little-known facts on kohlrabi and how I got into the kohlrabi business myself. First, following the future kohlrabi hoax, as you recall, the kohlrabi futures hoax, which you unfortunately publicized, there was someone at the dock with every last certificate to imported kohlrabi futures waiting for imported kohlrabi. That visionary pioneer was my great-grandmother, who you will probably know better as Mother Kagan, producer of Mother Kagan's creamed kohlrabi elixir and pudding mix. Another inaccuracy. which you have helped to spread, is the origin of Korabi. It is not the product of the whimsical mind of a Baltimore publisher, but was discovered by Gregor Mendel in October of 1847, when he inadvertently crossed pot with yellow cabbage. The origin of the name itself, although it has been covered up for years by the Catholic Church, actually comes from the fact that after he made his epical discovery, Mendel left the monastery and went to Cologne and became a rabbi. Also, I feel that the nature of your program does not lend itself to political crusadings. Certain government committees might reassess their farm subsidy program to Korabi farmers, if there was no such thing as Korabi. Your position as a Midwesterner is understandable toward East Coast farm subsidies, but lately even your Indiana origin is in question due to the unnecessary praise you've been recently heaping on Philadelphia, and especially its fine public transportation system. Since everyone knows that Shepard would never go commercial, a lot of questions have been asked. One final question, Mr. Shepard, which remains unclear in my mind after reading your biography by William Manchester and Ralph Rancher. Did you ever marry Esther Jane? Are you really the person who plays Martha Dean every morning in drag? As I represent the American Korabi Planters Association Public Image Committee, I appreciate your cooperation in the above matter. I remain Colonel Michael B. Kagan. I just thought you ought to know that this hoax has risen to almost unimaginable, almost impregnable, totally unbreakable dimensions. It's just impossible. Bring it up. All right, that's enough. I just had to do that. It's impossible. What is it, time, baby? All right. Speaking of hoaxes, this is WOR. And George, how many years have we been fooling the public now, WOR? 1923, something like that? This station went on the air? Oh, poor old Lincoln. What did he say? You can't fool all the public all the time. WOR. In the Big Apple. Fun City. Mr. Lindsay's big old playpen here. New Yorkie. Would you hit the money button there, Donald, please?
A wonderful dinner is the result of more than just the foods and sauces. It means that somewhere a good cook used time, experience, and a loving hand to give you pleasure. This is also true of an exceptional beer, such as Miller High Life. Naturally brewed from the very finest ingredients, Miller High Life has the distinctive flavor and goodness that comes only from a long heritage and tradition. First brewed for royalty in a famous castle on the Danube, Miller High Life quality has been passed down through generations of master brewers, each steeped in the old world ways of taking time to be sure of the best, in the great tradition of never compromising with quality, brewing to the finest detail, always conscious of the heritage and unquestioned reputation of Miller High Life. No wonder millions more are asking for Miller High Life. Where else can you find people so dedicated to bringing you an extra measure of pleasure? Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee.
Chichonia. That is the longest commercial on the air. Oh, Chichonia. That guy, you know, he sounds a little like a cross between Tony Wands and Mr. Anthony. Oh, Chichonia. Razzmatazz. A little touch of Galen Drake thrown in there, and a little bit of Billy Graham. That's what they call evangelical zeal. Hey, listen, we have a note here from a blind person, and it's a he, and I have not mentioned this lately. He writes and says, on a recent show, you stated that the American Association of the Blind asked you to read your book, or to record your book, on their talking book series for the blind. And he says, have you gone ahead with this, and what's the story about that? He says, it would be wonderful, so on. I want to read your book. This is one of those little things that occasionally an author, a writer type gets, that is, you might say, one of those little underground compliments. The talking book series for the blind usually picks books that they believe have more than a momentary appeal. In other words, they rarely record one of these momentary big gigantic bomb type bestsellers that last everybody reads, and then they disappear about 5 minutes afterwards with hardly any, I suppose you might say, intrinsic lasting value. And when I was called here a couple of weeks ago by the Talking Books people to record this, of course, you know this is a free service. They don't, there's no royalties or anything like that. It's done purely as a service to the blind. It was one of those undercover little background type compliments. And since talking to them, I discovered something very interesting, that they are going to record the entire book, which is something they don't always do. And so if any blind listener types out there who've been wanting to read In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash, just hold on. And as soon as this cold goes away, I've been waiting for the last couple of days, kind of putting it off. When this cold goes away, we will go into a recording studio with the Talking Books people and begin the recording of the entire book for the blind. So I just thought I'd put this little note here on the docket because I've gotten several letters about it from blind people. It's interesting how blind people will write. This is written by a blind person, Don, and they have special stationery and stuff. You can see that they have wide lines. And yet, you know, if you didn't know this person was blind, you wouldn't know at all from reading his letter. It just looks a little wider spaced than ordinarily, but a lot of people write like that. But he is blind, and I'm delighted to report that shortly the book will be available on the Talking Book series for the blind. Now, let's see. We have no, come on now. Don't tell me. No, I'm sorry, Lee. You're wrong. I mean, you're a very nice person, but obviously nobody could have written a song. Could not have become popular anyway. A song about a Japanese Sandman. You know, somebody tried to tell me that there was a song once that had to do with the title of it. I absolutely cannot believe this. It was one of Barry's lice. You know, Barry has a bunch of people working around here. They call them Barry's lice. And one of them was walking around. They all look exactly like that, big, thick glasses. And one of them was walking around, and one of them was singing the song, "Does the spearmint lose its flavor around the bedpost overnight?" I said, "Come on with you, don't give me that stuff." And this guy spent 10 minutes trying to argue me into believing that there was a song called "Does the spearmint lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight?" Ridiculous. I'm telling you that the poor, sad little snippets of misinformation that float in people's bread pudding of minds. It just sad. Does the bedpost lose its flavor on the spearmint overnight? Do you have a little more money there? Let's pour the button to him here. There you go. Hit it, Harry.
Oh, Harry, isn't that a nice ashtray?
Just a plain old Chinzano ashtray. I've seen them a million times. I mean, Chinzano's the biggest ashtray company in the world, ain't it?
Harry, I'd like the ashtray. It would look nice on my Italian provincial cocktail table.
For heaven's sake, Doris, what do you want me to do? Swipe it?
You don't have to be so crude. I could just slip it in my bag. The restaurant would never miss it.
Oh, all right.
Harry, is the waiter coming?
Come on, take it.
You're making a spectacle.
Pardon me, madam. Can I help you?
No, yes, waiter. Oh, I was just saying to my husband how much I'd like a Chinzano ashtray.
Would you like the Italian sweet or the French dry?
Huh?
Which vermouth would you like? Sweet or dry?
Oh, they make vermouth?
If you're one of those people who likes Chinzano ashtrays, you might consider liking Chinzano Italian sweet vermouth or Chinzano French dry vermouth, or both. We do make vermouth. Imported by Shefflin and Company, New York.
Is vermouth the stuff they use to louse up gin with? Oh, we have Rover here, gin drinker. I mean, Rover here for all of you poor solitary travelers along this great, fantastic, unbelievable, magnificent yellow brick road of life. For my fellow travelers out there, I would like to recommend that if you're going to make that long trip, as we all are, up this yellow brick road of life, you might as well try to do it in a little style, a little pizzazz. And we would like to recommend that you try the next 400 million miles of your journey in a Rover 2000 TC. A Rover 2000 T.C. A little romantic music, Donald. A little romantic music. My heart gets all soppy, all rotten, and all crummy like a piece of silly putty whenever I mention the Rover 2000 TC. It just, just all falls apart. It's just terrible. I mean, that's what having a sponsor will do. You just find yourself going a little nutty. And I just want to tell you that just the mere mention of the name Rover brings tears to my eyes, brings a catch to my throat. I'm sorry I mentioned it. This louses up the whole damn show. It's the Rover 2000 TC, which is a magnificent English car. It's just such a beautiful car. It's such a nice, wonderful people. You just don't find many good people anymore. It's the Rover 2000 TC. It's a beautiful car. Must go on. There, that's better. Boy, that's over. Just wrenches the daylights out of me. And speaking of wrenching the daylights out of me, there ain't nothing wrenching the daylights out of me like that weekly show we do down at the Limelight. I'll tell you, there's not a dry eye in the house when we go off the air at 1 minute past midnight down at the Limelight. There's not a dry eye in the house. In fact, quite often, immediately after we go off the air, the entire audience rushes the stage. That's why they got that chute for me to be shot right out to Bleecker Street instantly. There's a button, they shoot me right across through the Hudson Tube in the direction of Union City. Beautiful Union City. There is no place in the world that, in its own ugly, rotten, crummy way, is more beautiful than Hoboken. Oh, yes, there's a whole aesthetic about the beauty of ugliness. That's right. And speaking of ugliness, just rampant ugliness, we're at the Limelight every Saturday night from 10:30 until midnight. And I tap dance, and I blow horns and whistle, and I wear funny hats. I tell jazzy jokes, peppy patter. I use a lot of fancy footwork, and I tip tables over, and I pour beer on people's heads. It's just a great evening down there. It's just fantastic. And if you'd like to break out of the old mold, the old pattern, if you live uptown all your life and spend all of your days trying to get a reservation at Sardi's, and, you wear black glasses and think that by going to Le Club, you've really made it, friend, I would suggest that you try to get into the Limelight. It ain't easy. First, you got to wade through all that stuff. Well, that's another story. It's a Limelight, and it's on 7th Avenue South. You just drive straight down 7th Avenue right into the heart of Sheridan Square, and there it is. It's right down there by, where 10th Street and all those crummy little streets all come together and those fights break out and, all the pushing the pot and all that stuff. Well, it's right down there, Sheridan Square. In fact, sometimes the police department has often threatened to bust the entire square. It's Sheridan Square. And if you'd like to try to make a reservation for this Saturday's fiasco, that's kind of an Italian dance that I do. I do that before the show because it's a little risque for on the air. Prefer it. You do it with green tights. And if you'd like to, with the roses and all that stuff. And if you'd like to attend this week's fiasco, you call Fairlawn Fats. The number is Oregon 52212. Oregon 522. Oregon 52212. You notice how lyrical I am tonight? Speaking of lyricism, and then we'll get right on with tonight's problem, students. You thought you were going to get away. You thought I wasn't going to mention the homework, huh? Last week I mentioned you were going to have a test tonight, didn't I? You thought I forgot it, didn't you? Oh, don't you kid yourself. Let me tell you, this mentor is on the you-know-what. And what was I going to say? Oh, yes, indeed. We are going to assign, as this week's special assignment, this will appear in the final exam, you must read my short story in the current issue of Playboy magazine. Quit writing to me and telling me you like my article. That is not an article. It's not an article. It's not an article any more than, say, what can I say? That's going to appear on the exam, though. The title of this current short story in the April issue of Playboy is Scut Farkas and the Murderous Mariah. Hey, did you read this piece? How many of you have ever known anything about gypsies? I don't know. It's all associated with the whole shebang here. We've all been leading up to this. You notice I've been fooling around a lot tonight? Well, you know why I've been fooling around? Because I don't know quite how to get to this. It's a scary thing, this tonight show. And I'm going to give you a disclaimer. You don't have to listen to the rest of the show tonight because it's very scary. And it's not for women and children. Not at all. And it's about gypsies. One of our spies sent me a note, clipping from a newspaper. And it concerns gypsies. You know, you don't hear much about gypsies. You really don't. I don't know whether many people outside of New York City know that there is an entire gypsy world living in the heart of New York City. And from time to time, you run into all these gypsy kids standing around out in front of the dime store, places like that, right in the heart of Times Square, and they're trying to sell you all these little wax flowers or little wilted flowers. And boy, do they bug you. I'm telling you, they go, hey, buy a flower, oh, come on, you, buy a flower. They grab you by the foot and they hang by your, grab you by the ear and all that. And have you noticed that they're almost always girls? That's because the male gypsy does not work. By way of, it's a tradition. And this particular, I've had experience with gypsies, and that's why I'm bringing this up. Most of you people who live in the New York City eastern area probably have had only very tangential experience with gypsies. And usually the only experience most people have ever had with gypsies is to see these places once in a while with the purple curtains hanging, and this lady sitting in there with the bandana around her head, rocking back and forth on a rocking chair. They've got a great big sign out in the window with a hand, and it says palms read, Madame Lazaza, gypsy palm reader, that stuff. Tea served here. I wonder if anybody's ever gone into a gypsy tea room to have tea. Just going to say, I'm looking for a little crumpets there, a little tea. But they're sitting in there. That's probably the only experience that most people have ever had with them. Here's a little note out of Boston. Boston's shadowy gypsy colony occasionally bursts from its obscurity into the spotlight, fanning brief curiosity before sinking back into anonymity. Last Sunday's explosion was a gypsy wedding in Cambridge, a knife-wielding melee in which one man died of a heart attack and 6 guests were victims of mysterious stab wounds. Last spring, clusters of gypsies set up camp in the corridors and parking lots of Peter Bent Brigham Hospital to pay homage to the dying wife of their king. Even before the headlines faded, the gypsies had vanished, back into their sleazy South End brownstone tenements to pursue the nomadic conceit that marks gypsydom. Boston police estimate the local gypsy population at over 2,000. The figure is probably far from accurate because many of them give fake names, fake addresses, and no one quite knows who they are or what their names are even. The biggest enclave is in the South End, in the Columbus, Massachusetts Avenue axis. Smaller colonies are scattered throughout Dorchester and Roxbury. To the passerby, the most obvious sign of gypsydom is the palm reading parlor. Scattered on and off Columbus Avenue, the musty dens are reconverted stores featuring giant palm and phrenological. What is it? Phrenological. Yeah, that's the thing with the reading the bumps on the head. Phrenological. Phrenology. Reading bumps on the heads. And the old dream books and magic artifacts is usually graced by a young girl who sits in there. Have you noticed there's always a young girl sitting in there with an old lady? The young girl is supposed to lure men into the place. The old lady is supposed to lure old ladies into the place. And they read their fortunes. And in 5,000 years of gypsy enterprising, the parlor game has provided the biggest take with the palmists, the shills. We rarely get a man in a clip. It's always the woman. and most of the time it's a palm reading flim-flam, said the police detective, who was considered the department's gypsy watcher. Because he has gained the trust of local tribes, he asked to remain anonymous, of course. The dollar-a-throw palm racket is usually manned by a weazened, gold-toothed elder and her daughter, both garbed in kerchiefs, peasant skirts, and loose white blouses. According to one observer of the Boston gypsy scene, most of the marks, almost all of the marks, in fact, if not all of them, are middle-aged women with health worries and a passion to confess. She says that since children, the palmists have been drilled in their craft. They've been allowed to hide behind the curtains and eavesdrop. So by the time they're ready to go into the bullpen, to go to work, they're mature. And they can gauge their victim's past and fears by a quick glance at her posture, her dress, her facial expressions. Often the palmist will tell the victim that her money has a curse on it, and that it must be kept in the parlor to have the curse worked off by secret magic. Well, it works, strangely enough. The palmists are wise enough to human nature so they don't take their victim's entire bankroll. They'll take $30, but never $60, knowing that the mark won't complain if he doesn't lose everything, a detective said. It's difficult for police to apprehend palmists since the state law only prohibits predicting the future. Did you know that there's a state law in Massachusetts against predicting the future? Boy, that must be hell on a lot of political analysts up there in Boston. You imagine them going in and putting the arm on Walter Lippmann? Let's see. Excuse me. There's no law against recounting the past and present. When we get them here, in here, that's the palm reading joint, they say that they never mention the future. How can we prove they didn't? Says the cop. Gypsy men rarely work. Custom dictates that the women are the breadwinners. Sometimes the men show up at a hotel and offer to patch copper pots and pans. When in need of quick cash, they'll more often take to the road for instant fender fixing. With their cars serving as rolling supply stores, they'll park until they spot a bashed-up automobile. And then, shouting and gesturing, the gypsies will almost force the shocked driver off the road to try to cajole him into a quick repair job. Today, their game is 5-minute drive-away paint spray jobs. 5 minutes worth of work for $30, the cops say. Most of the time, however, the men just, quote, sit around home drinking tea and grumbling or playing gin. For the wandering gypsy, home is seldom where it was last year. But whether they're moving from Boston to Brooklyn or just down the block, the tribe will look for classic trappings, old stores, tenement flats, basement parlors, preferably always on the first floor, for a quick getaway. According to this expert, they seldom live alone. They seldom live above the second floor because they want to be seen by people passing who may want their futures told, and so they all sit in the window, see? Packing as many as 15 in a 2-room apartment devoid of furniture, they all sleep on bedrolls on the floor. They never use stoves, but keep 2 hot plates, one for tea and the other for goulash. That's the only thing they eat is goulash. Marriages are intertribal, with the bride's family selling her to the groom for cash. In a society where the woman is the breadwinner, the bride obviously has more worth than the groom. The more accomplished the bride-to-be is as a fortune teller, the higher the price. If she's really a skinner, man, she goes for a big price. The tribes are loose federations of families. Boston's big 3 are the Millers, the Bimbos, and the Stanleys. Gordon Miller, who lives on Columbus Avenue in Boston, is generally considered king of all Boston gypsies, a position apparently attained by his ability to get along with the police and to raise dough in an emergency. But within the colony, there is continual bickering about who is actually king. It just goes on and on and on, the bickering. Gypsy-collegists contend that the wanderers believe, now this is an interesting thing, they don't quite know whether this is true or not, but they believe that they have a divine right to steal, which probably accounts for their absolute lack of guilt when they're caught. Absolutely no guilt at all. They don't even know what guilt is. In a somewhat blasphemous myth supporting their thievery, gypsies are reported to have tried to steal the nails from the Roman guards just before the crucifixion. And Jesus was so moved that he told them that they had the right to steal anywhere at any time. That's the old tale, of course. Whatever their motives, at last Sunday's wedding brawl in Cambridge, they went right. In the middle of the brawl, when the cops arrived, the entire crowd went right for the policemen's badges and guns to steal them, according to eyewitnesses on the scene. Well, now let me tell you about gypsies now. I'm going to tell you a scary story. Now, there's two kinds of gypsies. There's the urban gypsy, and there's the rural gypsy. Now, they don't often talk much about the rural gypsy, because most guys who write live in the city. In fact, a couple of years ago, there was a nice series of articles in the New Yorker on the gypsies that live in New York City and travel back and forth from New York to Pittsburgh and Chicago and go to places like Boston. But most writers, being urban men, don't seem to know too much about the rural gypsies. Well, let me tell you about the rural gypsies. I remember as a kid, and it has not changed a bit because I know that this is still going on out there, that as a kid, it would be, it's difficult to, of course, there's no pattern or anything to the gypsy's life, and that's why you can make no black or white comment about it. But usually about March or April, right about this time of the year, all of a sudden, in the forest preserve, and all ringing out around Chicago, in the fields of Indiana, the fields of Illinois, and the fields of Wisconsin, and since I only know really about the fields of Indiana, which lies just south of Chicago, you know, I guess the difference between Chicago as an urban center and New York as an urban center is that there is no really definite end to New York. You can leave New York and you can drive practically all the way on up to a place like Portland, Maine, and never really leave the city. It's just kind of, gets a little thin in places and gets thicker in other places, but you're never really in a genuinely rural area, never really rural. But Chicago suddenly ends. It just goes boom, like that. And you get a little bit south of Chicago, you drive south of Hammond, and suddenly you're in nothing but long, flat fields that go on and on and on. And these are real fields, real working farms. These are not gentlemen Bucks County type farmers. These are immigrant Dutch farmers that grow stuff like onions, and they grow stuff like muskmelons, and they grow fields of corn, and they grow watermelons, and you drive mile after mile through these flat fields. Well, ringing just as a kind of purgatory between these flat fields and Chicago is a series of forests that just ring the entire city. These are called forest preserves. You don't hear much about those here in the East, but out in the Midwest and places like that, they have forest preserves, which are preserved forests. They just leave a forest there. It's like the county owns a forest, and it's there for people to have picnics in. And it's not a real park either. It's more like a forest. And they have an occasional place where you can go to the John, or they have a little swing or something. And these big picnics are held. Big family reunions are held. Stuff like the Lithuanian-American yearly dance, bash, and fist fight is held there. And 18 million Lithuanians arrive, steel workers, and they have a giant fist fight that lasts from 6 in the morning until 10 at night before they bring them all into the hospital to get ready for next year's big bash. And then after that, the Polish-American steel workers take over. Then after that, the Croatian-American steel workers take over. And then the Ukrainian-American steel workers take over. And then the Swedish-American, Ukrainian, Lithuanian steel workers. Oh, it just goes on and on and on out there. Well, usually about just this first touch of spring, we would be out riding our bicycles, and we would see a series of shadowy cars, old, gray, battered automobiles, a few trailers, all battered, parked in the forest preserves. It would be the gypsies. The gypsies have arrived. And they would scatter among the forest preserves, all of them hanging in great clumps. And you'd see fires. They would light fires. And you would see these dark windows of these trailers with gray curtains. And hanging outside of the trailers would be all kinds of drying peppers. Things like ears of corn, strange crucifixes hanging. And all over the grounds would be old ladies with shawls and with big earrings, and men just sitting on the steps of the trailers and on the running boards of the cars, wearing flat black fedora hats, white shirts, and great big black coats, and thousands of magnificent girls darting in and out of the bushes, and fires. And me and Schwartz, Flick and Bruner, there were always all kinds of myths and rumors about the gypsies. And there was one thing that the people always used to say: stay away from the gypsies. Stay away from the gypsies. Well, that's like telling a kid. I mean, you don't ever, it's ridiculous to tell a kid to stay away from anything. It's silly. This is the worst possible scene. And so the instant the gypsies would arrive, me and Schwartz and Flick and Bruner would begin to creep up through the bushes to watch the gypsies. We would lie on our stomachs and watch. And one night, something happened when Schwartz and Flick, me, and Bruner were watching the gypsies that I have never, ever in my life forgotten. Fantastic. It concerned an old lady and a lot of gypsies sitting in a ring around a fire, and the old lady throwing powders into burning fire, and puffs of black smoke going up into the trees. Have you ever actually seen witchcraft being performed? Have you ever actually been around? Well, every time now I walk through Times Square and these little girls grab my knee and say, "Buy a flower, buy a flower," I think of that night that Schwartz and Flick and me and Bruner got scared right out of our kid tennis shoes. If you want to hear that story, I could be cajoled into telling it. Tomorrow night, or some night when I feel that the women and children have gone to bed. I'll never forget it. And it is not fiction, man. It ain't a single word of fiction. As a matter of fact, I suspect that a lot of people think that gypsies themselves are fiction, that they're not real.